Well, good afternoon, everybody. Last week's vote, or I should say it's the week before last week's vote, not to shut the government down has seemed to create something of a civil war among the Democrats. And as they're sort of hashing that out, figuring out their path forward, we're going to continue to stay focused on our agenda. And this week is getting the president's people into place, continuing to process nominations so that the president has his team ready and ready to go to work. We'll continue working that. We're going to be working on unwinding a lot of the Biden administration's burdensome regulations through the Congressional Review Act process. And obviously, we're going to stay very focused on budget reconciliation, which is part of the president and our agenda as we head forward. And we had a good conversation about that at our lunch just now, and we're going to continue to be talking about this with our members and having the end goal in mind. And that end goal is coming up with a budget reconciliation bill in the end that extends the existing tax policy, which if isn't done will lead to a $4.5 trillion tax increase at the end of this year. Unlocking and restoring America's energy dominance, rebuilding our military, and making sure that our border is secure. Those are the issues that we believe need to be addressed in the budget reconciliation bill, and that's consistent with the president's agenda and with what the American people voted for in November. So that's the work at hand right now, and obviously as we move forward, we'll be working closely with our counterparts in the House of Representatives and with the president and his team in putting this together. But it draws a stark contrast with what the Democrats want to see, and that clearly is a $4.5 trillion tax increase at the end of the year, a lot more government spending, and obviously an open border, which is what we've had for the last 4 years. So we think that the work we're doing is going to draw a clear contrast between us and the Democrats and what the American people, we believe, voted for in November. So, questions?
Leader Thune, with this text chain, there was some indication that these officials didn't think much of the Europeans in this. Doesn't that problem with this antipathy for the Europeans underscore issues for this administration dealing with our allies?
Well, I mean, I think obviously we're getting to the bottom of what that whole text chain entailed, and I think obviously people are asking questions and they deserve answers. But I think that the United States right now is the recognized world leader, and I think the president's moves on the world stage, including the initiative against the Houthis in Yemen, demonstrates that this is a new administration. There's a new sheriff in town, and at some point, I think the Europeans and all the other countries around the world, whether they like it or not, realize that. And I think they have to understand that if they want to have the U.S.'s support, they've got to do their fair share as well. And I think that's the message the president has delivered to our European allies, and some of them don't like it. But they've been riding on the U.S. for way too long, and it's time for them to step up and do more.
Doesn't that publicly, though, harm our relationship with them?
Well, any text chains that are exchanged privately, I think you have to put that into context for what it is. I think you have to look at what the president says and what the people around him are saying on these issues of foreign policy and national security, and not text messages that were obviously probably inappropriate.
On reconciliation, you have a goal of maybe more than $1 trillion in cuts. You want to extend the Trump tax cuts. Democrats have said that you can't do that without impacting the entitlement programs. Can you guarantee at this stage of the negotiations that no one's Social Security benefits will be impacted at the end of this?
Well, Social Security is not eligible for consideration under reconciliation, so that doesn't get touched. And the president has made certain statements with respect to Medicare and Medicaid. And so as we look at this process, we're going to be looking at where can we find savings that are associated with waste, fraud, and abuse in some of these government programs, notwithstanding what the program is. And I think every American expects us to root out. If there are programs that people are qualifying for or using or abusing in a fraudulent way, that ought to be, we ought to be taking care of that. And I think both Republicans and Democrats and anybody else in this country would agree with that sentiment. I think at the end of the day, what is going to happen in reconciliation is we're going to have to figure out how to extend the tax policy. And remember, this is extending existing tax policy. There's some other things the president wants to do in the context of that. all of which we think will be additive to the economy. And when the economy is growing, expanding, creating better paying jobs, typically what happens is you get more government revenue, not less. In fact, the rule of thumb generally is about for every 1% increase in GDP, $3 trillion in revenue over a 10-year period. So growth it's not sustainable. I mean, these deficits, we can't continue this. And so we've got to start making some of the hard decisions. And I think you need to look at every area of the budget, but bear in mind, obviously, that programs like Social Security and Medicare are incredibly important. But if there are, even in those areas, if there is waste, fraud, and abuse, then I think those are areas that we ought to be looking at.
Leader, you raised concerns about the signal group chat. You said there were mistakes that were made. So should there be a full Senate investigation into this? And would you support a Senate investigation?
Well, I think that's happening already. I mean, I think the hearing's still going on. Senate Intelligence Committee today. I mean, they're up here. At least two of the relevant players in that conversation were in front of the Senate Intelligence Committee for a very long period of time in an open setting. And my guess is you'll probably, I suspect the Armed Services Committee may want to have some folks testify and have some of those questions answered as well. I think everybody has acknowledged, including the White House, that mistakes were made. And what we want to do is make sure that something like that doesn't happen again.
Leader, on budget reconciliation, Bill Goldberg, who worked up there many years as a budget staffer, said if you just look at a handful of tax breaks that are important to your small businesses and farmers, bonus depreciation, the small business pass-through, the death tax, extending those will cost $3.5 trillion. It doesn't even come close to what the president wants in lower corporate tax rates and ending tips, taxes on tips and on Social Security. He says he just doesn't see how it fits, and he thinks you're going to need an extension, just a straight extension of 2017 Jobs Cuts and Tax Act. Do you disagree with that? And if so, how do you see this getting paid for, fitting a square peg into a round hole?
Well, I mean, again, you'll have to, and this, forgive me for being kind of playing inside Washington here, but what we are doing by extending existing tax policy is just that. You're extending the existing law as it has existed for the last 8 years, since 2017. And so we don't think that ought to be have to be offset or paid for, as you say. If you're doing new things, if you're doing things that are creating new tax policy or new spending, then yes, you ought to be looking at offsetting that. But a lot of the tax policy we're talking about here, including the programs that you mentioned, whether it's bonus depreciation or interest deductibility or the 199A deduction for pass-through businesses, that's an extension of existing tax policy. And so you're simply extending what already exists. And that doesn't change anything. That's basically status quo going forward. There are other things the President does want to do in terms of tax policy, and as the Senate Finance Committee and House Ways and Means Committee, other committees of jurisdiction look at the broader conversation about reconciliation, obviously we're going to be looking at how can we pay for, offset, find savings and reductions in other areas of the budget as we look at potentially new tax policy.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'm proud to be joined by Senators Wyden and Reed. Today we're here to talk about two things with massive importance to all Americans: Social Security and national security. First, yesterday, Senate Democrats, alongside all other Americans, found that the Defense Secretary shared classified war plans in a group chat with the CIA Director, the National Security Advisor, and Vice President of the United States. For the Defense Secretary to coordinate war plans in such a haphazard and dangerous way puts our national security, our troops, and every single American at risk. Even after the administration confirmed the authenticity of the texts, Secretary Hegseth continued to deflect and blame the reporter. He does something really damaging to national security, and he blames the reporter who his people sent the information to. What gall! This is the Secretary of Defense. This is the man leading our troops into battle and is meant to protect Americans and our national security at all costs. The Senate, as well as all relevant authorities within the executive branch, must investigate this incident fully. Fully. We need the Senate to do it. I hope Senator Thune will join me in that. We also need the IG of the DOD to do it as well. As Senate Republicans scramble to defend Hegseth from endangering our national security, the administration continues to gut Social Security right in front of our very eyes. Social Security was already at its lowest staff level in decades, but instead of working to make sure seniors get their hard-earned benefits, Trump, Musk, and Doge are laying off more than 7,000 Social Security workers. These are the people who answer the questions for seniors, make sure they're getting the proper benefits as quickly as possible. Some offices have reported waits, most offices of many hours. Some, I heard one instance, 5-hour wait. Someone waited on the phone. On top of gutting the workforce, Trump, Musk, Doge are trying to close the regional field offices. Up to 60% of regional offices are being shut down. Social Security serves 73 million Americans. Over 30 million of those go into their local offices each year, more than close to half. How does closing offices and firing thousands of workers help seniors and the disabled get benefits? What they're trying to do is erode away at the American dream, rigging the system for billionaires while stealing from American families and elderly in order to make tax cuts for the rich. Let's be very clear. What's happening right now in Social Security is a benefit cut. A benefit cut. Fewer people will get benefits because of what they've done. This is another way of killing Social Security, plain and simple. They're shutting off phone lines, closing down field offices, firing people. It's clear what they're doing. They can't outwardly cut benefits because it would be so unpopular. They're just making it harder for you to get benefits. Same thing, different route, same nasty result. Americans aren't falling for it. Today, the Washington Post showed that while Elon Musk is claiming massive waste at the agency, he has no evidence to back that up. He just wants to kill the program one way or another. Why are they doing this? Why would they do this? This is so politically unpopular. Because a clique of billionaires just control what the government is doing. They don't care about people. You heard what Lutnick said the other day. If you miss your check, it doesn't matter. Well, that's true if you have a billionaire son-in-law, but it's not true for people who depend on the check each month, each week, each day, for their food, for their medicine. So, today was SAA nominee Frank Bisignano's hearing. Ron will talk about it. But given his history, he used to be sent into companies to slash personnel, and the administration's slash and burn policy, it should be an easy vote. Any Republican who votes yes on Bisignano is voting to cut Social Security for our seniors. Any Republican who votes yes on Bisignano is voting to cut Social Security for our seniors. Time is short to stop permanent damage to Social Security administration. If Republicans continue to do nothing, the political backlash will be unprecedented. Senator Wyden. Wyden.
Thank you, Leader Schumer. And I'm going to be brief and just touch on a couple of key issues. First, this nominee for Social Security is up to his eyeballs in dosh. And today, we demonstrated that he did not tell the truth about his track record with respect to Social Security. He claimed, for example, that he had no involvement with dosh in terms of insisting that people be embedded who were close to dosh, who be part of watering down people's protections for their data. And a very senior ex-Social Security person basically said that he lied. We're happy to make that statement available to all of you. We made it part of the record today. But the reality is that there are some areas where seniors are just terrified right now, and it starts with the phone system. And I asked him repeatedly, for example, if he would take some of the common sense steps that are necessary to get phone service, back. And as far as I can tell, he thinks that AI is a silver bullet. And I pointed out to him when he came in as well that a lot of seniors are not exactly signing up for chatbots and looking for all these so-called fixes. And my God, I wouldn't want to see somebody like United Healthcare involved in this, particular area of services. So what this is really all about in terms of Musk and this nominee is they want to hollow out Social Security. They want to hollow out the essential functions that the government has performed and then say, oh my goodness, we've got to get some private contractors in. So what I can tell you is what the Senate Finance Committee heard today was what I call a prelude to privatization. Because what you do is you set it up this way. You start dismantling the government functions, then you go to private contractors. All of a sudden, you've got something that's completely privatized. This nominee said he knew nothing about privatization. I urge all of you to look at the statement from the whistleblower, because that statement indicates that we've got big problems with DOSH right now in terms of they're looking at private data that is basically the Fort Knox of American data systems, and we're not going to have the ability to protect people as we ought to. So this is a crucial kind of time. I'm doing everything I can to mobilize attention to this, because in terms of phone systems and offices and personnel, I asked him again and again if he would take some common sense steps to actually help terrified seniors, and he basically said he was too busy. He said, we're going to have to do that another time. Thank you, Senator Schumer.
Senator Reid.
At this moment, the White House and Secretary Hegseth are trying desperately to underplay an extraordinary blunder. We cannot overstate how serious of a disaster it is. If an American service member texted classified information about an active military operation to an unknown number on an unclassified app, they would be dismissed, investigated, and prosecuted. But the White House says there was no classified intelligence in this signal group. If that's true, the administration should immediately provide a copy of the group chat to Congress and the American people so we can make our own determination. I also understand that the messages in this signal chat were set to erase themselves after a certain amount of time. This would be a violation of federal records preservation laws. As such, the administration must preserve and provide a full transcript of these sessions immediately. Put simply, this has been one of the most egregious failures of operational security and common sense that I have ever seen. Up until now, military operations have been handled with the utmost discretion, using approved, secured lines of communication, because American lives are on the line. We need answers and accountability immediately. We should be grateful, frankly, that it was Jeffrey Goldberg, a responsible reporter, and not a foreign adversary who received this intelligence. Had this information been available to the Houthis in advance of the strikes, it could not only have allowed them to seek shelter, but it could also have allowed them to reposition anti-aircraft weapons that have put the lives of our aviators and other service members at risk. Taking a step back, all of this happened as the Trump administration systematically degrades America's national security in multiple ways. And I hope our Republican colleagues will join us in demanding answers and accountability for this incident. To quote Secretary Hegseth himself talking about the mishandling of classified documents, quote, "If at the very top there is no accountability, then two tiers of justice exist. There must be one tier of justice, and Mr. Hegseth should follow that path of justice." Secretary Hegseth, however, went forward and deliberately sent the details of a military strike package, including the movement of U.S. service members in an active combat zone, on an unclassified app without confirming who the recipients were. I can't imagine that this information was not classified. President Trump has long advocated for accountability and transparency in the government, particularly as it relates to national security and the safety of American servicemen. As such, I trust he will address this breach with the seriousness and the diligence that it demands. I again request Secretary Hegseth to submit a full transcript of his signal messages to the Armed Services Committee. There is no legitimate basis for him to withhold information from the committee that he claims is unclassified and has already been shared with a journalist. And I urge a bipartisan investigation and swift action. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, right here. Pardon? Look, what he did is despicable. We need a complete and thorough investigation, both by the IG within DOD, but also the Senate and the House. The Senate, Democrats and Republicans should look into this and have a full investigation. Republicans should not turn their head the other way with something so serious.
Leader Schumer. Thank you, Leader Schumer. On foreign policy, Second Lady Lucia Vance will be making a visit to Greenland soon, and this comes at a time when President Trump has talked about annexing Greenland and bringing it into the United States. What do you make of this visit, and do you support the administration's talk and rhetoric about acquiring more territory?
Look, they constantly try to divert attention because what they're doing is so unpopular with the American people. Cutting Social Security, cutting Medicare, cutting Medicaid, all to give taxes to their wealthy friends is very unpopular, so they're constantly looking for smoke screens. Yes.
Speaker Johnson brought up the idea of defunding courts today, and I wondered if you had a response, given that, I guess, in theory,
It is It is outrageous to even think of defunding the courts. The courts are the bulwark against Trump, and the Republicans can't stand it. But that's our system of laws. We will fight in every way to keep funding the courts.
On Social Security, sir. Republicans argue that the Social Security system is antiquated, that the computer systems need to be updated, that it would actually serve these recipients better. Do you think there's any merit to that?
Tell that to the 73 million Americans who believe and need Social Security. Tell that to the millions of people who are not getting answers, who have their offices closed so they can't get their checks. They are so wrong on Social Security. We thought they had learned their lesson. They have not.